Moments of inspiration mixed with time to network, IBJ Media Events has you covered. From industry deep dives to awards celebrating Indiana's top leaders, see what's coming up and reserve your seat at ibj.com/RSVP.
Welcome to the Indiana Lawyer Podcast. I'm your host, Maura Johnson, and in today's episode, I sat down with Ashley Hart, Executive Director of the Indiana Supreme Court's Judges and Lawyers Assistance Program. The court's Judges and Lawyers Assistance Program, known widely as JLAP, provides crucial confidential support to legal professionals in Indiana through mental health resources, support groups, and individualized plans designed to help lawyers and judges find their footing in a challenging but important career. Hart recently became Executive Director of JLAP after serving as Deputy Director of the organization. She follows in the footsteps of former Director Terry Harrell, who announced her retirement earlier this year. In today's episode, Hart and I discuss her road to the Executive Director position, what resources JLAP offers to past, present, and future legal professionals, and how pressures surrounding the legal profession have shifted in the last few years, marking new challenges for individuals who serve in these roles. But before we get into the discussion, here's a word from our sponsor, Taft.
Taft, today's modern law firm. At Taft, we cultivate a highly respectful, transparent workplace that fosters creativity, teamwork, inclusion, and diversity. We couple our culture with a client-first approach, rewarding lawyers who understand their clients' goals and work to deliver success. Taft, the modern law firm. To learn more, visit taftlaw.com.
All right, Ashley, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me.
So to start off, obviously you're new in the Executive Director role at JLAP, but can you tell me about how you got here, what your background is, and how that goes into your new role?
Sure. So it really feels like I came back home in this role because I was a dual degree student at McKinney School of Law and the IU School of Social Work. So getting my JD and my master's in social work at the same time, had an emphasis in mental health and addiction practice, and had to complete a practicum as part of my social work program. So ended up with a placement at JLAP, and it ended up being divine intervention. So I started as an intern working with the original team that was in place in 2018 and completed my semester there, and then went on to work for JLAP a little bit part-time, just doing intake and answering the phone and helping team members out, and then went out and did some private practice in law for a while, worked for the federal court system for about 5 years, and then ultimately came back to JLAP when there was a position open in the deputy director role. But that whole time between 2018 and 2024, I was an active JLAP volunteer. I have a JLAP therapy dog, the Honorable Canine Judge. So I did a lot of work in that capacity, and then sat on the JLAP committee and had the privilege and pleasure to do that from 2018 to 2024. And then now I'm staff, and it feels like coming back home to where I started.
So what does this new role entail? What kind of are your maybe daily, weekly duties?
So I think it's a really outward-facing role. So I have a collaborative team there are 9 of us, and it's interdisciplinary. So I have the privilege to lead that. There are legal professionals, there are mental health professionals, peer supporters. So it's a great leadership opportunity for me to coach my team and help them develop their skills so that we can better serve the population that we serve. But it's outward facing in the sense that I have the honor to do this time that we're taking to do an interview today, but also to do a lot of education in the legal community. We do about 100 outreach events and presentations a year, getting our mission out there and teaching people about well-being. So it has both an inward and outward facing component to it, which is exciting for me.
Yeah. And we were talking off camera about the presentations that JLAP does and how it always tends to include JLAP 101. So
yes.
For anybody who may not be familiar with what JLAP does, can you kind of give that, that 101, the basics of the program?
So I say if I have a couple minutes with you and we're riding an elevator together, this would be my elevator speech. I think JLAP is in the business of doing two things. We say that we improve lives and we foster connection. But our full mission statement is that we are an Indiana Supreme Court agency specifically created to provide confidential, compassionate support to all Indiana judges, lawyers, Supreme Court employees, bar applicants, and law students by promoting well-being, improving lives, fostering connection, and thereby elevating the competence of our profession. So we believe if we're taking care of ourselves as legal professionals and we're acquiring the resources to do that, and we're looking out for our colleagues and looking out for each other, that we're engaging in that diligent and competent practice.
And so obviously judges and lawyers is in the title.
Yes.
How does maybe the resources or maybe the approach to supporting judges and lawyers individually differ?
So I think they have different stressors, right? And so we'll see different issues, but there are a lot of commonalities in the profession of law. So we know research tells us that mental health is an issue in the legal profession, that substance use is definitely an issue. Lawyers report anxiety rates higher than the general population. I think judges have different stressors in terms of isolation. It can be lonely in their roles. They may not have as much peer support. So it just depends, I think, on their circumstance and where they sit in the work that they do. But we see a lot of overlap in the services that we provide as well.
And I would say the profession probably is, like you said, isolating in that it is a skill set and a day-to-day tasks that are very, unique. And you're dealing with clients that face their own challenges and having to, I guess, navigate that in a way that's still you're maintaining that professional barrier.
And I think what we see with legal professionals a lot is something called secondary or vicarious trauma. So that can be the lawyers working a case, or that can be a judge presiding over the case. But we often are tasked with arguing facts of a case or being heavily involved in a client's story. And so sometimes it's really hard to be human and shed that and go home and not take some of that with you. So we know that we can experience trauma in a secondary or vicarious fashion. And I see that a lot with legal professionals as well, which is one of the issues that we see that we receive calls for help about.
Yeah. So in your time in JLAP, not only in this new role, but over the years, how have you seen maybe topics of mental health or maybe problems evolve? How has that kind of changed, maybe even with like COVID and...
Sure. So I think that originally the LAP programs, the lawyers assistance programs, which there's about one in every state, but those started really as a way for lawyers to support lawyers with substance use issues. So we would see things like alcohol use and abuse and other substances. And it's really evolved to be broad brush services that we offer now. So it's not just, I think we face the stigma or the myth that JLAP is just the alcohol police, or JLAP must only deal with calls about alcohol or mental health. But really, the predominant calls that I deal with are something called situational stressors. And I say that out loud, and people look at me like, what is that? That's a buzzword. But it's really any life stressor. Can happen on a daily basis. There's a number of unexpected things that happen to people every single day. And I often just call it life. So I might be helping somebody with grief and loss, which doesn't discriminate and affects us all. It might be helping somebody with, I'm adjusting to my first legal job. I don't know if this is the right fit for me. I don't know if this is using my best skills. I may be working with somebody who is deciding whether their life transitions are impeding their ability to practice at that moment. So we can experience good and bad stress. So even things like moving or having a new baby or getting married can bring someone both positive and negative stress. And it can just impede sometimes the way that we show up as a whole person. So I often get calls about things like situational stressors, and that really, it can be a vast, huge area.
That's interesting. So you do both kind of one-on-one services to judges and lawyers, but also these community or like support groups. Can you talk about that as well?
Sure. So definitely we will assist in really a peer support capacity, but I want to be really clear, we don't provide individual counseling.
Okay.
So that's a myth that often we just have to clarify and explain. But if a member of our population would call, we're certainly going to do some consultation. We're going to gather information. We're going to develop a collaborative plan with how we can support. So that may look like something as simple as, hey, Ashley, I'm struggling with depression. Do you have a good recommendation for a provider or therapist that I might be able to reach out to? Or I'm a caregiver for my aging parents, and is there a support group resource for me? So we do everything from basic referral consultation to more reactive things, which we can certainly talk about, things like formal or voluntary monitoring that we do. But specifically, we do offer a number of support groups to the legal community. We have an addictions issue group that meets twice per month. We have a mental health group that is newly relaunched as of this summer because we know mental health touches our profession. So I'm excited that that group is back as an offering. We have a specific grief and loss group. We have a connection group. Yeah. The connection group actually meets weekly. That grew out of the pandemic. So you mentioned the pandemic earlier. What we learned in that capacity is that we had to be able to go remote and we had to be able to go virtual. And people were experiencing significant isolation at that time, even more so than we do in general practice. So that connection group was really well received and welcomed at the time. And we got such great feedback from it that we've kept it. Yeah. So it is really a space where if we're combating loneliness or isolation, it's a good referral for people just to have connection with their peers.
And I know you guys provide statewide assistance, correct? Yeah. How do you reach lawyers and whatnot across the state and kind of connect them?
Great question. It's a tall order. I say we're small but mighty, and we do the best that we can. One of the ways in which we do that is we have a great pool of JLAP volunteers. So we are constantly trying to recruit, retain, educate them, but they are legal professionals who maybe have used JLAP services themselves and had a great experience and want to give back, or people who have time to volunteer and want to help lawyers and have their own lived experience that helps with that. So my team could not do what we do without the volunteers across the state to help us connect with somebody in a more rural area or help spread our resources out. We do try to get around the state with our outreach and presentations. I drive a lot in this role, and I enjoy doing that. So I get to engage with different local bar associations and other legal agencies and partnerships. And so we try to get out there as much as we can, but we know that we pivot and shift, and we can do a lot of things remotely and virtually, thank goodness, with technological advances that we certainly appreciate.
Is there any part of the state that you're maybe looking for outreach for more volunteers and people that could help in this way, and kind of what can they do in that capacity?
So I think certainly we're always looking for people in the rural communities where we are facing legal deserts. So in those remote areas, definitely if there were volunteers that wanted to help, we would certainly take it. We have a volunteer application. So if anybody is listening and they're interested, please call us and let us know, and we'll go through that vetting process. But we do have some JLAP Rockstar volunteers that are regional representatives that are around the state, and they help us with those efforts as well to help us identify where there's gaps and we could look for some more support.
Yeah. And I feel like something that maybe attorneys or law students don't know is that you guys do also provide resources to law students before they even take the bar and their license as an attorney. Can you talk about that and how you work with the law schools?
Yes. So I love to say that I love to be on the proactive end of things. If we can get in and get early and, be there often and have a presence, it's so helpful to let law students know that we're not only an agency that will help you once you get licensed and throughout the course of your career, but we're really there for the law school experience, which we know is incredibly unique and stressful, comes with its own baggage, if you will. And so we do a lot of law school initiatives, including being a part of orientation for new students, doing presentations at the law school, being involved in their professional responsibility or responsible lawyering classes that invite us to come in, speaking to their clinical students that are actually taking some time to work on real cases with real clients. So any opportunity that we have to have those invitations, we'd love to take advantage of it and just have a presence so the students know you have a friend. It's not something to fear. Yeah. It's something to openly talk about and to have that presence. We take the therapy dogs to the law schools. They're incredibly popular. Like I may never be cool, but my dog is certainly cool. And it helps me have conversations with the students that I might not otherwise have. So we're always looking for ways to engage them.
Yeah. What does the therapy dog process and I guess program look like for you guys?
So we have a team of dogs. They go through an actual certification. Many of them have to first pass their canine good citizen. That's what we require. So our dogs behave and they know what they're doing and what they're supposed to do, and they can take direction, and they have good temperament, and we know that about them. And then many of our dogs go on to actually do therapy dog certification. So that is a test that they have to pass. They have to renew that on a yearly basis. And so it's just education for your dog to be well trained to behave in certain spaces. So my dog could do hospice work. He could be in the hospitals. He could be in the libraries. Our dogs are often involved with, reading, having the kids read to them in the library and things like that. So they go through that process, and then we're able to take them to different places that would love to just have joy from the canines.
Yeah. And so when you talk about outreach with law firms, what does that kind of look like in terms of maybe helping employers help their employees?
Sure. So I think we get a request for consultation sometimes. So a firm may say, we want to offer well-being programming, but what does that look like? And what are some of the best resources? And how often should we do that? And what subject matter should we cover? Yeah. And so we'll provide that kind of request for information. I've certainly been invited to firms to do presentations. I do a lot of work on resilience and micro-resilience. And so we're often invited in to do some work with a law firm to educate them and give them some just real coping skills for balancing work, life, heavy caseload, those types of things.
Yeah. So apart from the mental and emotional toll that the profession can take on these individuals, do you ever address maybe like physical health and kind of how that plays into their roles and their mental well-being?
For sure. I think physical health is certainly part of what we talk about when we talk about well-being and self-care, although there's lots of dimensions to well-being. So we're talking about occupational, environmental, intellectual. I think SAMHSA identifies like 8 different dimensions, or you might find different dimensions of wellness. But physical health is definitely important. And when I'm educating law students, especially in micro-resilience, it's like all the things that you need to do to take care of yourself. It's sort of that Abraham Maslow pyramid of needs. Are you meeting your physical needs first, right? If I'm not doing that, I can't get up the pyramid. And so we'll talk about things like fueling your body and making sure that you're taking care of yourself and taking time to exercise and incorporate movement, whatever that looks like, whether that's yoga or doing some sort of physical practice out in nature. So definitely it is a component. It's not the only component, but I think it's one that we forget about often. Yeah. So I feel that I'm often just a mirror. I'm not presenting anything new or novel. I didn't invent it or create it. I'm just the mirror to remind people that don't forget about it in high stakes or high stress situations.
I know another element of JLAP is I often read you guys' kind of involvement in attorney disciplinary cases. Can you talk about what your role is in that and how you support lawyers and judges through that?
Sure. So first, I will say that probably 95% of the cases or the calls that we get are voluntary. So someone is coming to us voluntary. They are wanting to get ahead of a situation. They need to maybe engage in voluntary monitoring, which is where we will work with them to get them back on track, whatever that looks like, whether that is monitoring someone for substance use or mental health, something like that. So most of our calls are in the space where someone says, I need help. And I'm going to make that call voluntarily. 5% or less of the calls are what I would consider formal. So that is where there is a court order saying someone does have to work with JLAP, and we outline what that looks like. So we're really there, I think, to be person-centered, to meet the person where they're at, to look at those needs. We have a balancing interest of certainly maintaining the integrity of the profession and making sure that we're protecting the public, but also we want to have clinical goals to help someone thrive. So not only do we want to adhere to those expectations of the profession, but we're also interested in compassionately supporting the person to get their life back on track.
Yeah. Well, and I think that a lot of times when these cases come in, it seems like a very stoic, hard thing. But what you talk about is just meeting them where they're at and making sure that they are well as a person so that they can do well as a professional.
And I think everybody has a story. There are reasons for how we got somewhere, right? And we are trying to certainly uphold the expectations from the court and what they want to see. And we're also just trying to take care of the person. So we're not doing it from a punitive capacity. We're not regulatory in that sense. We don't have a final say or outcome in admission or discipline, but we are there, we often say, just to walk people home.
Yeah, I love that. What would you say are maybe the biggest misconceptions for JLAP that you get from the people that you speak to?
So I think there's always a fear of confidentiality. That's a big one. People always think, oh, JLAP is going to report to the judge I work for or the court or the disciplinary commission. And we take our confidentiality really seriously. So it's rooted in our admission and discipline rule 31 and professional rule of conduct 8.3. So any call that's made, whether you're calling for yourself or you're calling on behalf of someone else, held in the strictest confidence unless there's a release of information, letting us share that information. And then it's very clear how that's shared, what the terms of that are, right? And we have a couple of exceptions to that. If there's a release, if there's imminent danger of homicidal intention, suicidal thoughts, then certainly we have to do what we have to do to protect somebody and keep someone safe. But confidentiality, I think, is it's a big roadblock for people, and people have lots of questions. So I say confidential a lot, and I mean it. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to emphasize that and reiterate that. I think, again, people think maybe the only problems that we deal with are substance use or mental health. And then I'll talk to people who call because they have a grief and loss issue, or they lost their pet, or, they're just having a hard time adjusting to their work environment. And so I'm always surprised at somebody saying, I didn't know I could call JLAP for that reason. So I think we certainly have some stigmas to break and myths to bust, but we're doing our best every time we get out there to do that.
Looking ahead, we're nearing the end of the year. Do you have any specific goals for 2026 for your new role for JLAP? What does the year ahead maybe look like for you guys?
So I think always a goal is engaging our volunteers, again, retaining them, recruiting them, giving them the tools so that they can further our mission. So providing them with timely education that is relevant to the way in which they're helping us. That's always a big overhaul and always something I think that should be at the forefront. Also, everything, I believe, practice should be reflexive. So as much as I'm educating others and my team is educating others, we also need to be educated, and we also need to stay on the cutting edge of what the mental health field looks like, what the addiction fields look like, what we're seeing in the profession. So this last year, I've sent a couple teammates to Love First intervention training that's done by Deborah and Jeff J. They are top renowned interventionalists. We have a couple people that are now grief educated specialists who have gone through David Kessler, grief experts training. So I'm always looking for opportunities for how we can learn more so that informs how we better serve people. We also do crisis response. So we know that things happen. If there's a situation in the court with a law firm, with a legal agency where something has happened, a death has happened, something traumatic has occurred, we have a menu of services that we offer. And that can be as simple as just showing up and providing resources, bringing our therapy dogs in, doing a formal kind of debrief situation with a group, doing some one-on-one meetings with people. So I think the next year's initiative will be to take that practice and see how we can expand it and where we can go from there, because it's a really important service that I would like to see us be able to offer.
Definitely. And if any judges, lawyers don't know how to get a hold of JLAP, how can they reach out to you over the phone, online, etc.?
So they can look at our website. So that's on the court's website. It's JLAP Helps. If you just Google Indiana JLAP, you will find us. You can call our office. We also know that sometimes people aren't comfortable picking up the phone. And so we have a public intake form that is available on our website. So if that feels more comfortable or safer to fill that out, that gets staffed, that gets routed to us. So there's ways in which you can get to us. We are located at the Capitol Center building. We're in the South Tower. And so people can visit us, but you can certainly call ahead and we'll make an appointment. We also know that we're in a space to meet virtually. So if meeting in person doesn't work, we have the option to do something virtual to talk to people too.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
That will do it for our very last podcast of 2025. Thank you, as always, for listening to and supporting the Indiana Lawyer Podcast. If you're interested in learning more about the resources JLAP provides, we will put a link to their website in our show notes.
I'm Tiffany Souter, mom of four, wife, entrepreneur, and host of the Life of And podcast. For years, I built my life with brute force, a successful business, a growing family, and absolutely zero margin. I was tired, snappy, and felt constantly behind, and I was too afraid to admit it. Everything changed when I stopped trying to do more and started building systems that actually worked for my real life. If you too are craving more peace, more presence, and just more time for you, I'd love for you to join me on The Life of And. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast app or listen at ibjpodcast.com.
On the go? So are we. Get the IBJ Media app, your all-in-one news source for Indiana business news. Get breaking news alerts, read every story from IBJ, Inside Indiana Business, and the Indiana Lawyer, and listen to your favorite podcasts all in one place. Big news, small screen. Search IBJ Media and download the app today.